Well, we've been hearing it and reading it for months now. U.S. President Donald Trump repeatedly saying Canada should become the 51st state, and that's put some Canadians on edge. But not everybody is convinced Trump would follow through with annexing the U.S.'s closest ally.
I do not believe that represents a real threat to us, but those remarks are disrespectful and concerning.
Defense Minister Bill Blair telling reporters in Brussels that while Trump's comments are offensive, he does not believe Canada is actually at risk of being annexed by the U.S. And that's raising questions over what Trump's real goals are with all his 51st state talks. So to help us answer that question, we're joined by Stephen Marche. He's the author of The Next Civil War, which, by the way, is a great piece published in Maclean's. You should have a read, but after this interview, because right now we want to talk to Stephen. This piece in Maclean's, Stephen, that you published describes Trump's comments as fantasies of annexation and conquest. Why do you believe that the U.S. cannot annex Canada?
Well, I mean, annexing a country is the work of the state, and they're in the middle of breaking down their state. I mean, if a serious person were attempting to annex Greenland, Canada, the Panama Canal, and whoever else, and the Gaza Strip, the first step probably would not be disbanding the CIA. And that's what he's done, right? So he's actually weakened American power in a very pronounced way, exactly at the time as he's making all these remarks. So, he may well really mean them, but he certainly is not doing anything to make American power even close to approximate what would be required to do this.
Stephen, then how do you explain the fact that, we heard Bill Blair saying this is not serious, but, last Friday, the Prime Minister told business leaders Trump is serious. Then we just heard Dominic LeBlanc out of his meetings with Howard Lutnick saying, I had to stress that Canada is a sovereign nation. So how do you explain that position then by government leaders?
Well, I mean, he really means it just the same way that a crack addict on the subway really means that the government's coming to get him, right? You're dealing here with insanity. And so the insane person means it, but that doesn't mean that it's meaningful, if you will. We're dealing with something that has no consistency, has no internal logic, is dissolving under the weight of its own madness, is doing things like destroying its own scientific community and its own education system. What this is a sign of American breakdown. And that's the real risk for Canada. And that's what we really need to prepare for, is the breakdown, not conquest. I
want to talk about the ripple effects of that potential breakdown. But first, let's talk about motive. If these 51st state threats aren't genuine, then what are the motives for continually repeating them over and over?
Well, who can say what the motives of Donald Trump are except for, attention today? Okay. Right, like what he wants is a lot of attention right now, and for everyone to praise him very grandly. And I don't really think there's much more motive to that. I mean, this is not a plan, right? There's no architecture for enabling this to happen. And what he is good at is destroying things, but he can't really build anything. So when you're talking about motives here, I don't think you should look at anything he actually says as his intention.
You've written this: if your neighbor's house is on fire, yours eventually will be too. We talked briefly about ripple effects of this instability. What are your biggest concerns?
Well, the Canadian political class has exactly one goal right now. Well, actually two. One is lower interprovincial tariffs and to get our oil available to a global market. If they cannot do that, they should quit politics. It is it is priority one, all other priorities rescinded, and they need to do it as a new act of confederation. And I think that whatever is happening in the United States, we need to do that because that guarantees our security and that guarantees our independence. So those are the tasks on the table right now.
Stephen Marche, I think yours are the words a lot of people needed to hear after a very tumultuous week. Thanks for joining us this morning. And a reminder to our viewers, you can read The Next Civil War, written by Stephen Marche. We'll be right back. If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.